Hi beautiful, welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be reviewing all three of the new face palettes from Hourglass. I'm going to swatch each and every one. I'm going to try each and every one of the shades that come in here. I'm going to give you all of the details on the collection and tell you what my favorite palette is and what I think of each and every one of these and which palette I recommend for whom, etc. I know I look very tan right now, very bronzed. You'll see why when we get to this makeup application in the video, but I am super excited to talk about this collection. If you like this video, don't forget to please give it a thumbs up. Before you leave, if you're new to my channel, my name is Patty. Please don't leave without subscribing, and let's just go ahead and get started. So right away you might notice that the vibes of these palettes are a little bit different for Hourglass, and that is because Hourglass collaborated with illustrator Katie Scott, and she designed the outside packaging of each and every one of these. And these palettes are extra special because 5% of the profits from this collection are going to be donated to the Non-Human Rights Project in efforts to secure fundamental rights for animals. So that is why there is beautiful little creatures on the outside of this packaging. Besides that, I can tell you right away that I feel like the palettes kind of have vibes that cater to different complexions. There is one that is a bit lighter, a more medium one, and then the one I'm wearing right now, which you can probably tell right away is a bit too dark for me, which is the Tiger palette, is actually, and spoiler alert, I'm gonna say this right now, pretty good for deep and dark complexions. Another amazing thing that Hourglass did this year with their holiday collection was, besides the fact that they brought out 3 different color stories, the fact that the palettes are semi-customizable, we'll call it. I'm saying semi because you can't pick every single shade that goes inside your palette. However, you can pick the color story of the palette that you like the most, and you can put it inside the case that you like the most. So let's say you have a dark or deep complexion, and so you want the Tiger palette, but you love elephants and you want the elephant on the outside, then you can put this palette inside this case and have your customized palette. So I think that is absolutely fantastic. These palettes are made in Italy and they each retail for $85. I've seen that in the past, sometimes Hourglass's holiday collection goes on sale, but I have heard that in previous years, before I even shopped these collections, they would also sell out. So if you really love one of these, I would say get it now and don't regret it later, because it's not guaranteed that they're going to go on sale, but like hopefully they will. Anyways, I know that a lot of you love these palettes because you get a ton of use out of them, especially if you use them on a daily basis. And you know what? Let me stop rambling. If you're interested in purchasing any of these palettes, I have them listed and linked down below in the description box of this video. When you shop my links, you help my channel, so obviously always very appreciated that you guys use my links. And let's get started trying the palettes. The first palette I'm going to try is the Butterfly palette, and this one is the least exciting one of the 3 because 3 out of the 6 shades are already existing shades. Those shades are Ethereal Light, Incandescent Light, and this one down here, which is a little bit more yellow, which is called Diffused Light. And these are pretty much all kind of like finishing, blurring, powder type of things. And then the 3 new shades that are for this palette are the 2 blushes and the metallic highlighter. This blush right here is called Soft Flush. The one down here in the middle is called Sunset Glow, and then this metallic highlighter is called Celestial Strobe Light. The only Hourglass palette I have in my collection is the one from holiday last year, the light one, and very fortunately for me, none of the shades I own are the same as the shades in this palette. So to me they're like new, even though I've tried them before. I've worked at Sephora and whatnot, and those are very old shades in the Hourglass line, and I know that they are existing in a lot of the little holiday palettes as well, but I didn't own any of them, so lucky for me, I don't have these shades repeated in my collection yet. Still though, I think the Butterfly palette is one of the least exciting when it comes to this holiday collection. Take a look right here at the swatches. These two and this one are like barely showing up because they are meant to be more translucent powders. I'm actually pretty impressed they show up at all. And then the main thing I want you to pay attention to is the blush shades and the metallic highlighter. The metallic highlighter's formula, I can already tell you, is not going to be like my favorite highlighter formula, and maybe I'm speaking too soon. I'll definitely try it on my face to see, but I feel like it's going to show up my texture on my skin, and that is such a turn off for me when it comes to highlighters. I'll stop speaking ahead of time though. Let's go ahead and try the palettes. Since this palette didn't come with any bronzers, I already went ahead and bronzed my face ahead of time, and I'm going to start with this shade up here, the one called Soft Flush. And with my REPHR number 5 brush, I'm going to tap it on my cheekbone. I was scared of it and I grabbed very little because it looked super pigmented when I swatched it, but I actually went in like I usually would with a blush. I didn't try to like not pick up any or anything, and it's looking nice. It definitely looks like I have blush on right now, but it looks pretty flattering. I'm not upset at this color at all. I think it looks flattering. It matches the warmth in my eyes right now. It blended with the bronzer beautifully, and it has that super ethereal look to it that Hourglass formulas are defined by, where it looks just super smooth on the face, and I love that. I just wiped my brush off. It is kind of stained, but I wiped it off, I promise. And I'm going into the shade down here. This one is called Sunset Glow, and I'm a little scared of it, so I'm going to tap off a little bit of the excess and then pat it on my cheekbone. It is blending beautifully once again on top of that bronzer. It matches the warmth of my eye, and I just mainly wanted to see if we could see a noticeable difference between the two shades because they look very similar in the pan. One of them has a swirl, the other one doesn't, but even when you put it on the cheeks, I don't know if it looks like that on camera, but to me they pretty much look the same. Which, if you're going to make a chic palette where 3 out of the 6 shades are translucent like powders and you put 2 blushes in it, I would try for the blushes to be some sort of different. Maybe a cool tone one and a warm one, maybe a pinky one and a peachy one. I don't know, they just look pretty much identical. Let me pick up my mirror and like just see it closer. Yeah, even when I'm just looking in the mirror, I can barely see the difference between these two at all. By the way, I'm going to grab a little bit of this shade right here and add it to my under eyes, just because I didn't set my concealer with anything, and that way I can use that shade. In case you guys haven't seen it before, I figured that would be a nice idea. It's definitely nice and brightening underneath my eye. You can tell the difference between them. So you know what? Let me grab the more yellow one and show you under the other eye to see if there's some sort of like color correcting situation that happens. I can pretty much use both of these all over my face / under the eye area. They're really nice ethereal setting powders. So see, this one still looks a little bit brighter because it is a little bit brighter in the pan. This one has a bit more of that yellow undertone. And then why not, just to use every shade, I'm going to grab this one and add it to my forehead up here. Now, this shade right here, which is the Incandescent Light shade, does have a little bit of shimmer in it. You can kind of use it as a very light highlight for your face. So this one I wouldn't use underneath the eyes. I would just use it kind of to highlight, or if you'd like to have a glowy complexion, you can put it all over. I just wanted to show you it like right there on the forehead, the way it looks. Lastly, let's go for the metallic shade. I'm using a Wayne Goss number 5 brush, and I'm just going to add it to the top of my cheekbones here. And yes, I feel like what I said about the formula unfortunately applies. It's not my favorite highlighter formula. I feel like you can see my texture enhanced. And I noticed that since the moment I swatched it, because even on my arm it made my pores look a little bit more apparent. I blended it out with some blush and it's wearable, but I don't think it's a favorite one for me. So I don't know, overall this butterfly palette is not my favorite. And I'm honestly hoping to be a lot more impressed with the rest of the palettes in this collection, because this one's just okay. I do like the butterfly packaging, nothing against it, but I prefer the packaging of the other two, and then I already told you everything I had to tell you about the formula. Moving on to the Elephant palette, which I think is going to be my favorite. This one is a little bit more cohesive in my opinion. It does have a bronzer, it's got 2 blushes, a couple of powders that you can use for setting, and then a metallic highlighter. So you can kind of have everything you need for a full face of makeup. You know, I already have foundation and concealer on, but for like all of the coloring touches, you have everything you need in this one palette. Also, this one is definitely my favorite packaging. The illustration of the elephant up there, I die for it. It is so pretty. The peachy packaging is beautiful, the elephant is beautiful, and since the beginning, since I first saw these palettes, I just knew that this one was going to be my favorite. I believe that the 2 existing shades in this palette are these 2 right here, which are Dim Light and Soft Light, and these are kind of already existing all over finishing powders in the Hourglass line. And then I think the 2 blushes, the highlighter and the bronzer, are new to this collection. I have foundation and concealer on. I have not set anything because I want to try all of these on my face right now. But before, let me show you the swatches. Take a look right here at the swatches. As you can see, these are the 2 already existing setting powders and then the rest of the colors. On camera, you can barely see the difference between the 2 blushes, but in person, and maybe if I put it like here somewhere, this one's a lot more peachy and this one's a lot more of a cooler tone pink blush type of situation. So in this one, there is even an actual visible difference between the tones of the blushes. They're not that far apart, and I think I like the peachy one a little bit better, but you can definitely see some sort of a difference in the undertone of the blushes, at least when you swatch them, unlike the previous palette where the 2 blushes to me looked exactly the same. I have a clean brush. This is my favorite, the REPHR number 5, and I'm going to start with the bronzer. It's swatched quite dark, a little bit darker than I was expecting. So I'm going to try to be careful with it. I just kind of distributed what I grabbed all throughout my forehead. I would say this is a nice neutral bronzer. It's not too warm, which I really appreciate. Also not too cool tone. So it's going to give you a nice shape to your face without creating any weird shadows and without making you look orange, which is kind of a sweet spot because it's going to suit a lot of different medium tone, light to medium tone complexions, I would say. Moving on to my cheeks, I'm building it up right here and underneath my jaw. Take a look right here. This is the bronzer fully applied. I definitely love the way it looks, like I said, nice and neutral. So let's go on to trying the setting powders. I'm going to start with Dim Light right here, and these are both a little bit on the luminous side, and I'm going to tap it underneath my eyes here. I just want to show you the difference between the 2 and kind of see it myself. It's not going to be a super brightening under eye powder, especially if you have a complexion like mine. If you have more of a medium skin tone, then it might actually be more of a highlighting powder for you, but it still looks really nice and natural. I feel like it blurs the pores really nicely, and it gives this soft, diffused, luminous finish to the under eye area. I'm grabbing a little bit more, and I'm going to do this half of my forehead and blend it into the bronzer. You can definitely see, and I can see it even better in the mirror, that the under eye and the forehead on this side no longer look as bright as my concealer had made them, because like I said, it's not a brightening powder for my complexion, but it still looks very nice and very beautiful. So with the other side of my brush, I'm going into this more yellow shade, which is called Soft Light, and I'm going to set this under eye with it. I think the yellow tint in this one maintains the brightness a little bit better. Let me do this side of my forehead. And just like on the other side, things look diffused, pores look blurred, the skin looks extremely natural and beautiful. And the under eyes are set. So really like both of these. I can see myself totally using both. You can even kind of like combine them if you want. And if you have a light complexion like mine, the good news is that it's not going to make your under eyes look darker by any means. It just won't brighten them either. Okay, so now let's move on to the blushes. I'm going to start with the one that I like a little bit best, which is the peachy one right here. And this is another REPHR number 5 brush. And with this one, I'm going to start by tapping right here on the top of my cheekbone and blending it into my bronzer. I love it, just like I expected. It is such a pretty blush color. Very natural, very girly, nice and peachy. It doesn't enhance my texture or anything. It blended beautifully into everything I had done before. And it's not fully matte. I feel like it has the tiniest little bit of like specks in there. Honestly, you can barely see them, but it is, we'll call it a luminous blush, and I think it looks absolutely stunning. With the other side of my brush, I'm going into this one here, which is a little bit darker. This one scares me a little bit more because I'm not a huge fan of like Barbie pink shades, but we'll see. I've been proven wrong in the past. So I'm grabbing a little bit and patting it on my cheek. See, this one you can see a little bit more. It is less luminous than this one here, and more of a blue based pink, we'll call it. I didn't need to build it. I did build this one a bit, and honestly it looks good, but it is a bit more Barbie pinky. So for my personal taste, maybe not my favorite. I like this one a little bit better. I like the peachy blushes, but not bad. Not bad at all. The last shade from the Elephant palette we have to try is the highlighter, and I am terrified because I think it's going to be too dark for me. I think once I face the camera, it'll probably look luminous because obviously it is a shiny powder. But maybe if I turn my face, see, it creates not much, honestly, it's acceptable. It creates just a teeny bit of like darkness right here, but honestly, it is barely noticeable, so I'm a lot less disappointed than I thought I would be. I think this palette is beautiful, and I'm sticking to my thought that it is the best one in this collection for me personally. I still have one more palette to try and review, but yeah, that is the highlighter right there. Okay, so finally take a look right here. This is the whole palette on my face. I have two different under eyes, two different blushes. The highlighter is the same, the bronzer is the same. I do prefer the more peachy blush over here. And the highlighter is not my favorite, but the bronzer, I did really love the bronzer. The bronzer was a huge plus for the Elephant palette, and I definitely wish that there would have been a bronzer on the Butterfly palette that I tried a few minutes ago for you yesterday for me. Time to review the last one, which is the Tiger palette, and I left the darkest one for last, which is not the greatest decision because I still need to film the intro of this video wearing, I guess, this palette. I'll try to make it work, hopefully I can, otherwise I'll just have to do my makeup for a third time today. I don't regret it though because I used the Elephant one to like go out and run some errands, and I got compliments on my makeup. I was told things looked good, right? So obviously the Elephant one is, I think, my favorite one because this one is pigmented, which is a great thing because for years Hourglass has gotten a lot of feedback regarding their lack of inclusivity, and I think that this palette is definitely going to work on dark and deep complexions. So I'm very happy about that. I bought it to show you, to swatch it, and I think I'll try and make it work. This shade right here is supposed to be a setting shade and all over powder shade for dark complexions, and I'm going to try and use it as a bronzer, and so I'm going to kind of switch the usage of these to try and make it work for me. Wish me luck. Let me show you the palette up close. Here is the artwork of the Tiger palette. Just as beautiful. as the previous two. And then this right here is what the interior of the Tiger palette looks like. Absolutely love all of the shades that come in here. They look fantastic. There are two shades that are already existing within the Hourglass line. This one being one of them, which is the Finishing Powder in Transcendent Light. And then this blush right over here, which is the Iridescent Rose Blush. So these right here and these right here are the new shades for this palette. Let me go ahead and swatch this one. And I didn't do live swatches of these palettes to show you because I find that I have to go back to the pan several times to build the shades to my liking so that they show up on camera, since Hourglass usually has these blurred soft powders, and especially with the previous two palettes, a lot of those translucent looking shades weren't going to really show up with one swatch. That is one pigmented shade right there. This one is a blush and it's called Burnished Glow. It is a beautiful glowy, like burnt orangey blush that is going to look absolutely stunning on medium to deep complexions, I feel like. Check out these two highlighters or metallic strobe powders. They look incredible. Oh yeah, these are going to be fantastic. And lastly, the iridescent blush, which like I said, already existing. So take a look right here at the last swatches, the swatches from the Tiger palette. I am obsessed with like these three shades in the middle. Both of these highlighters and this blush look absolutely incredible. And I feel like this one I could probably make work for me. It doesn't look that deep. Wish me luck trying to make this palette work because like I said, I want to film the intro of this video wearing whatever comes out of here. Starting with Transcendent Light, and this is a REPHR number 24. Like I said, this is a finishing powder, but for me, because I'm pale, it's definitely going to be a bronzer rather. So I'm going to try and just distribute it nicely all around my forehead. That actually looks really good as a bronzer. You guys know I tend to like cool tone bronzers, and that is not bad. It's definitely more of like a sculpting powder, I would say, as far as the undertone is concerned. But I feel like I was able to like blend it enough that it doesn't look blushy or anything, and it created a really nice shadow all around the forehead area. I dig it so far. Let's see how it behaves on the cheeks right here. By the way, thanks to the lack of Hourglass products in my personal collection, I was able to get all three of the new holiday palettes, and even though 7 of the shades in the palettes were repeated shades in their collections, they're all brand new to me. So every single shade in each one of these powders is new to me in my collection, which I'm honestly pretty excited about. Alright, bronzer applied. Take a look right here. Honestly, like I said, pretty impressed that I was able to make it work, because it's not a bronzer, it's a setting powder, but I think it looks pretty incredible as a bronzer. I am not mad at all. For blush, I'm going to use this brush from Sigma. This is the F12 setting powder brush. My reasoning being that I want something that is small but also very fluffy and kind of like long, so that hopefully I don't deposit a lot of blush on my cheeks, because the blushes on here look pretty pigmented. So let's see how that goes. I'm going to start with this one since it's the new blush of the collection. That looks so dark. I am scared. Alright, it's applied and now I buff. Oh, I think I made that work. I mean, it looks nice, doesn't it? It looks like if I had applied bronzer to my cheeks, because it's kind of like a bronzy burnt color for my complexion, but it works. I feel like I just came from like the pool or something. I'm not mad. That looks pretty good. So there's barely anything left on my brush. I'm going to wipe it off on a paper towel and grab this blush shade right here. And then once again, proceed carefully over here. So, okay, this is a little bit more intense, also a little bit more blushy, but not bad. And I could wear it like this or once again with my big fluffy brush, I can buff it to see if it wants to look even more natural on me. Okay, not mad at all. Nice and summery over here. It looks like I just got burned today, and then this is the tan that I have tomorrow. For highlighter, let me try this one with my Wayne number 5 brush right here. It's a beautiful golden highlighter, and this one is going to work best starting on a medium complexion. It definitely is a bit too dark of a highlighter for me. So you can kind of see the darkness right there when I turn my face. But it looks pretty. It has that same pretty metallic highlighter formula that I don't think looks the best on my skin, but not terrible either. And I'm going to try this one over here. I could use it as a blush topper, but I'm still going to try and put it on my highlighter area so you can see it. So take a look. That is what it looks like there. As a blush or blush topper, is not bad. As a highlighter though, it definitely gives a shadow to the side of my face. But on a chocolate skin tone, this highlighter here, incredible. I feel like that's going to look so good. So I've tried 5 of the shades so far, and I'm not looking like a clown quite yet. And the only shade I'm missing is this one here, which is kind of like a finishing powder. So I think I'm going to survive the Tiger palette. I have gotten a little bit creative where I place my products, but I really didn't want to have to do my makeup again. So with this middle shade right here and a fluffy F24 brush from Sigma, I'm going to apply that one to the center of my face. Wait a minute, I can see now with my hand to my face that I look really dark. But it looks pretty. Alright, let's just keep going. A little bit more of that shade, and I am just putting it everywhere. So take a look right here how the shades in the Tiger palette look on a light skin tone like mine. I definitely don't look light anymore. It looks more like a medium complexion because everything gave me a little bit extra color. I have a tan going on right now. I feel like I could make it work if it was the middle of summer and I had actually gotten out of my house this summer. Maybe I could make it work for me. But like I said, this palette, not about me, not about you if you have a light complexion either. This is about dark and deep complexions, and I'm definitely very glad that Hourglass decided to come out with 3 palettes this year rather than 2, and actually have a palette that caters to dark and even deep complexions. I feel like these colors are pretty universal and that a lot of people with dark, deep complexions, tan complexions can use them, and I think that that is incredible. I'm back to give you my final thoughts on all of these palettes. I hope you liked all of those swatches and demos. I can for sure already tell you that my favorite palette is hands down the Elephant palette. Outside and inside, I feel like the inside of the Elephant palette has the color story that best caters to my personal taste and also my complexion. Every single one of the shades in the Elephant palette totally works for me. The powders aren't the brightest, but I can totally use them for all over my face. The blushes worked. I like that the colors are different enough from one another that I can differentiate them. The highlighter is okay. It's not like my favorite highlighter I've ever tried, but I also don't hate it. And then it has a beautiful bronzer that also works. So this is hands down my most recommended. If you're going to go for any palette in this collection, I would shop this one. And if you hate the Elephant for some reason, which don't, because like he's really cute, and you want to put this color story in a different packaging, you can pick the Tiger packaging or the butterfly packaging and include this color story in there, which I think is amazing. Obviously, if you have a darker deep complexion, the Tiger palette is going to be fantastic for you. This palette is not only really inclusive, but I also really like that all of the colors in here are different. The 2 blush colors are distinctly different from one another. The highlighters are distinctly different from one another, and even these like setting powder slash bronzer for me are pretty different from one another. So there's a really nice variety of shades in here, really nice and diverse, and perfect, I would say, if your skin is from tan to deep. If you're like a medium complexion, maybe you can make it work, but I think that this palette is definitely best from tan to deep complexions. Lastly, my least favorite palette has to be the Butterfly palette for sure. I feel like this palette would be good if you're like really interested in just having mini versions of these powders that are already existing in the line, and this format sort of works for you. But I feel like it's a little weird because the two blushes are really pigmented. The blushes in the Elephant palette are actually a little bit lighter than the blushes in the Butterfly palette. You can see them right here. As far as the blushes are concerned, these blushes are definitely more pigmented. And then besides that, the other thing I told you from the beginning, from the get-go, is that this blush and this blush look pretty much identical to one another, at least on my complexion. They do. I could barely tell the difference between them, and so for that reason, I just don't think this palette is worth it. First of all, it has 3 shades we've already seen before. Second of all, these 2 blushes don't work for light complexions, because it would make sense that this was a medium complexion palette, a deep complexion palette, and a light complexion palette, but nobody with light or fair skin, I don't think at least, would like to wear this much color on their cheeks. So this one is just confusing to me. I don't hate it. I'm glad I have it. And like I said, I didn't have any of the shades in my collection that came in any of these palettes, so this is definitely a win for me. But this is just my least favorite. It doesn't make sense. And I actually do like the Butterfly packaging, nothing against it, but the inside of the Butterfly palette just doesn't make sense. A bunch of setting powder with 2 blushes that pretty much look the same, and a highlighter. I much more like the variety of shades that come in these 2 other palettes. So these are definitely the ones that I recommend for fair to medium complexions, and then from tan to deep complexions right here. Anyways, I love you guys so much. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up before you leave. If you're new to my channel, please don't leave without subscribing, and I hope to see you back in the next video. Bye.